Hey IELTS learners, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm your IELTS teacher and the host of the IELTS Time podcast. And guess what? We're starting something brand new today that I'm super excited about. We're launching our brand new Vocab Booster series right here on YouTube, where we take some of the juiciest words and phrases from our podcast episodes and break them down for you, making them super easy to remember and use in your IELTS speaking test. For this very first lesson, we're diving into some fantastic vocabulary from two recent episodes. Episode 51, where we talked about helping others, and episode 52, all about flowers. Ready to supercharge your vocabulary? Let's go. First up, let's bloom with some vocabulary from our flowers episode. Our first phrase is brighten up. Now, this is a fantastic phrasal verb you can use to talk about making something more cheerful or pleasant. In the podcast, Joseph said, I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with them or anything, but I definitely appreciate them. There's just something about seeing a bunch of colourful flowers that brightens up a space, you know? So, brighten up a space means to make a room or an area more cheerful and lively, usually with colours or decorations. For example, adding a fresh coat of paint can really brighten up an old room. Try using brighten up to talk about things that make you feel happier or make a place look more inviting. Next, we have a great expression. Admire them from afar. This one's perfect when you appreciate something beautiful, but prefer to observe it without getting too involved or close. Here's how it came up. I guess I'm more of an admire them from afar kind of guy than someone who'd spend hours in a garden, but they're cool. So if you admire something from afar, it means you appreciate its beauty or qualities without wanting to possess it or get deeply involved with it. For example, I love looking at the mountains, but I prefer to admire them from afar rather than climb them. Another excellent phrase is catch my eye. This means that something attracts your attention immediately. In the context of flowers, Joseph said, I guess if I had to pick one that always catches my eye, it'd probably be something like a daisy. So a daisy catches my eye because it stands out. For example, a vibrant red sports car always catches my eye when I'm walking down the street. You can use this for anything that grabs your attention. Now let's talk about two expressions that go really well together, minimalist and bits and bobs. In the podcast, Joseph said, my place is pretty minimalist and I'm not really one for decorating with a lot of bits and bobs. So, if your place is minimalist, you probably don't have a lot of bits and bobs lying around. For example, her office was very minimalist, with just a desk and a computer, no extra bits and bobs. Think about how you describe your own living space using these words. Here is another great expression you'll want to remember. Low maintenance. Joseph had a great example in the episode. He said, I prefer plants that are a bit more low maintenance if I'm gonna have any greenery indoors. The phrase low maintenance describes something that requires little effort or attention to keep in good condition. For example, I chose a low maintenance haircut that doesn't require much styling. Or, I drive a pretty low maintenance car. It rarely needs repairs and gets good mileage. And it's not just for plants, hairstyles or cars. You can also use it to describe people, routines or even relationships. For instance, I'm very low maintenance, I'm happy with simple things and don't need anything fancy. Moving on to something more emotional, let's talk about the phrase, lift my mood. To quote Joseph from the Flowers episode, they instantly lift my mood and bring such a beautiful sense of life and freshness into any room. Flowers for many people instantly lift their mood. For example, you may say, listening to my favourite music always helps to lift my mood after a long day. Or, a walk in nature always lifts my mood, especially after a long day in front of a screen. And to wrap up our flower-related vocabulary, we have the word versatile. This adjective means able to adapt to many different uses, situations, or purposes. Joseph put it like this. I think flowers are incredibly versatile, so I'd give them on so many different occasions. And he's right, flowers are versatile. You can give them for birthdays, anniversaries, to say sorry, to say congratulations. Basically, they work for almost any occasion. Here's another example. A good chef needs to be versatile and able to cook many different types of cuisine. So think about it. What's something in your life that's versatile? Maybe a piece of clothing, a skill you have, or even a piece of technology you use every day. All right, let's switch gears and dive into some powerful vocabulary from episode 51, where we discussed helping others. One great idiom that came up in the episode is, "What goes around comes around." This proverb means that the consequences of one's actions will eventually be experienced by the originator. In simpler terms, good deeds are rewarded and bad deeds are punished. Joseph explained it nicely in the episode. He said, another reason might be that sense of what goes around comes around. Like, we hope that if we were ever in trouble, someone would do the same for us. This is a great phrase to use when talking about the idea that kindness has a ripple effect. For example, she always helps her neighbours, believing that what goes around comes around. Try using it when describing moments of kindness, fairness, or even justice in your IELTS speaking answers. Next up is a really common and useful adjective. Overwhelmed. This word describes the feeling of having too much to handle, whether it's too much work, too many emotions, or just feeling like you can't cope. Joseph summed it up well in the episode. He said, basically, anytime someone feels overwhelmed or stuck, that's usually when help is most needed. So when you feel overwhelmed, it's often a sign that you need support, or maybe just a break to reset. Here's an example. He felt completely overwhelmed by the amount of work he had to do before the deadline. What about you? How do you deal with feeling overwhelmed? Here's another super useful phrasal verb. Pick up. In this context, it means to learn something informally or by observing it, rather than through formal study. Joseph gave a great example. He said, I think the best way is by seeing it happen around them. If parents or teachers regularly help others, kids naturally pick up on that behaviour. It's kind of like learning by example. So when children pick up on behaviour, they notice it and start to copy it, without being directly taught. You can also use pick up in lots of other situations. For example, I managed to pick up a few phrases in Italian just by listening to conversations during my trip. Or, you can pick up a language by living in the country. Or, pick up a skill, like cooking or playing guitar, just by doing it regularly. It's a great phrasal verb to use when talking about learning through experience. Let's look at a really useful phrase for describing communities. Tight-knit. This adjective describes a group of people who are closely connected and supportive of one another, like a small town where everyone knows each other and looks out for one another. Now, when we say tighter-knit, that's just the comparative form. It means even more closely connected than another group or community. Here's exactly what I said in the episode when I was commenting on Joseph's response. He contrasted the smaller, tighter-knit communities of the past with today's big cities where, as he said, there's more distance between people. A tight-knit community often means stronger social bonds and more mutual support. For example, in small villages, communities are often very tight-knit, and everyone knows each other. And finally, from our Helping Others episode, let's look at the phrase, more guarded. This describes someone who is more cautious or reserved, especially when it comes to expressing their thoughts or emotions. Often it's the result of past disappointments or a general lack of trust. In the episode, Joseph said, we're also exposed to a lot of negative news which can make people more guarded. So when someone is more guarded, they might hold back from opening up, trusting others, or trying new things. For example, after being let down several times, she became more guarded about sharing her feelings. This is a really useful phrase when you're talking about how media, life experiences, or even relationships can shape someone's behaviour or attitude. And that brings us to the end of our very first Vocab Booster lesson. I hope you found these words and phrases helpful for your IELTS speaking preparation. Remember, the best way to learn vocabulary is to use it. So, try incorporating these words into your daily conversations, and even better, practice using them when you're answering IELTS-style questions. Let me know in the comments below which vocabulary you found most useful today. Thanks for watching. And before our next lesson, be sure to catch our latest episode of the IELTS Time podcast. Until then, happy studying.